Hey guys, today is a homeschool video and I want to share a quote and converse a little bit about a quote that's in this book, Consider This. Now, Consider This says it's a Charlotte Mason and the classical tradition. So Karen Glass is somebody who will hands down say she's a classical educator, but she uses Charlotte Mason to do so. And what I love is that she really concisely, because it's not a thick book, and just does a really good job of breaking down how Charlotte Mason is classical in the more true sense of it than perhaps some of the more modern classical approaches. And so what I loved, I was reading this the other day, and it's talking about on page 18 the purpose of education. And she's quoting someone named David Hicks from the book Norms and Nobility. The purpose of education is not the assimilation of facts or the retention of information, but the habituation of the mind and body to will and act in accordance with what one knows. This idea that education is more about doing what is right rather than merely knowing information is founded on a long tradition. When our knowledge is transformed into action, it becomes virtue, and virtue was the goal of the classical educators. And so the reason why we use Charlotte Mason education is because I don't want to just shove facts into my children, and I don't want them to think that their value comes from what they know. We can all learn things whenever in life, especially with the internet, like the opportunity is abundant to understand more and more about the world that God created. But to really wrestle with ideas, not just facts, and to really synthesize into yourself what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to have virtue? What does it mean when I read about this or that in history? Not just knowing the dates, but really understanding, like, where is the virtue? Where is the action? What decisions would I make? Why did those leaders make those decisions? And so wrestling with ideas. And it's interesting because recently I moved away from Charlotte Mason because I was in a stress cycle and I couldn't plan and everything felt very overwhelming. And so I went to Catholic Schoolhouse and I loved it. It was simple. It was open and go. I was touching different facts, right? And I actually personally was learning quite a bit, but the kids were so bored. They liked that it was short, but they didn't have to digest ideas. It was kind of lazy work, honestly. And I wasn't requiring tests and things because I don't believe in that stuff. And so they were just kind of taking it in and then pushing it away. And the way that we truly understand something is to do this, to teach it, right? But it's also to, and we can talk about narration another day for sure, because that's a huge part of the Charlotte Mason education. But it's really to take something and digest it and to start to understand it in line with everything else you know and believe, and to take it into that long-term memory. And that's going to look different for every single person in the whole world. Every single child is going to take a reading and come away with different ideas and different ways of assimilating that into themselves. And the Holy Spirit, which I truly believe guides our education, helps each child take what they need. And so when we think about an education as more about leading to doing what is right and good and true, right, then it turns not so much into my child needs to know X, Y, or Z by fourth grade, and more so just, again, kind of keeping the tabs on how is my child doing with their virtue? How are they doing with living according to the way that God asks us to live? And how can I, in our discussion time, foster this idea of virtue and all that's encompassed in that? And so I do suggest this book for anyone who is either on the classical side or the Charlotte Mason side, because I think that Karen Glass, again, does a beautiful job of kind of synthesizing the two. And I just want to say, I think it's really interesting. I started reading Confessions a while back, and what St. Augustine said, he was critical of his education, his classical education. And I thought it was just an interesting beginning to that book when I'm contemplating my own homeschool, when he was like, I didn't need to have Latin shoved down my throat. We don't, that's not really how we acquire language. And it should be in this more natural way. And so I feel like Charlotte Mason, or I think, not just feel, but I think that Charlotte Mason's philosophy is one that allows us all, but including children, to learn in this very natural, individual way so that, again, they can prepare for whatever their personal purpose is and vocation is in their life, because everyone's going to look so different. And I just love that. I feel like my education with my children is very Holy Spirit guided, rather than having a curriculum tell me what my child should know by a certain age. So I hope this was helpful. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place, but when it comes to Charlotte Mason and education, sometimes I feel like I don't have a firm footing, but I'm more and more. I am getting one. And I definitely suggest the book, A Philosophy of Education by Charlotte Mason. You do not need to read her first 5 works in order to read A Philosophy of Education. And I am just so inspired and so fed every time I get there. And just for those of you who are curious, I am using the CMEC for the 3rd time this year. And I will do a different video, but I need to prepare a little bit more about why I am using the CMEC. But they are having their big curriculum launch. It's an all-day Saturday live occurrence where they go through all the books for all different forms. And so if you are on the fence about joining the CMEC, now is definitely the time to really dive in and make that plunge, because the live event is really, really, it's amazing. It's like self-care. Okay. Like there's actually a lot of self-care built into the CMEC, and that's something I really appreciate about it. So, all right, guys, until next time, have a beautiful Saturday. Bye.